Things are heating up between the United States and China.
And it seems to be stemming from Trump's tariff threats.
Trump has doubled the amount of tariffs on Chinese goods to 20%.
And Beijing has hit the U.S. with an additional 15% tariffs on a range of farm exports and an extra 10% tariffs on things like soybeans, dairy products, fruits, and vegetables.
The Chinese embassy tweeted this week, if the U.S. truly wants to solve the fentanyl issue, then the right thing to do is to consult with China by treating each other as equals. If war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end. Here's Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's response.
Well, we're prepared. Those who long for peace must prepare for war. That's why we're rebuilding our military. That's why we're reestablishing deterrence and the warrior ethos, is because we live in a dangerous world with powerful, ascendant countries with very different ideologies. If we want to deter war with the Chinese or others, we have to be strong. And that president understands peace comes through strength. He also has a great relationship with that gentleman right there, too, Xi Jinping. So where we can partner, where we can cooperate to recognize that we don't want war with China, we don't seek that war, we will. And the president has sought historic peace and historic opportunities. But my job as the Secretary of Defense is to make sure we're ready. We need the defense spending, the capabilities, the weapons, and the posture in the Indo-Pacific, which is something we're very much focused on.
Now, the president's tariffs have come under scrutiny. When he announced tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China this week, he shook up the markets. Trump did seem to give the auto industry another chance, however, specifically those following the rules of a 2020 U.S., Mexico, and Canada, or USMCA trade agreement. He delayed the tariffs for a month. He had a call Tuesday with automaker CEOs and wants them to expand production in the United States.
But are these tariffs giving Trump the results that he wants? Trump has reiterated that if companies want to avoid tariffs, well, then they should build in the U.S. And apparently some have done just that. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing announced this week they were investing $100 billion into the U.S. to build more factories here. And SoftBank, a Japanese internet services company, announced in December they were investing $100 billion in America to create 100,000 AI and tech jobs. And an Emirati property development company pledged in January a $20 billion investment for data centers in America. Then there's Apple, who sometimes manufactures overseas in places like China, India, and of course Taiwan. They committed a $500 billion investment in the U.S. They plan to invest in silicon engineering and AI, build a factory in Texas, and a manufacturing academy.
Podcaster Ed Krasenstein wrote on X, "Remember when Republicans kept claiming that Biden was going to start World War III? I don't remember this type of Chinese threat under Biden, do you?"
Author Gordon Chang chimed in, writing, "The global trade war did not break out today. It broke out decades ago when China adopted criminal and predatory trade policies. President Trump is only responding, defending our economy." Yeah, I agreed essentially with Pete Hegseth's comments there. I don't think they were particularly controversial. We don't want a military confrontation with China, and I'm all for diplomacy with China. I'm glad President Trump is open always to dialogue with President Xi Jinping. That said, we need to have economic security, and we can't be overly reliant on China particularly for semiconductors. And though we don't want Taiwan to come under any threat either, we probably shouldn't be reliant on Taiwan for semiconductors either, given how proximate they are to China. I am always skeptical that we will be able to do manufacturing again in this country. I think the regulatory and labor barriers to actually building those kinds of things here cannot be overcome, but I'd be happy to be proven wrong. I know this is a major goal of Trump with the tariffs. Now, I would always say, if it takes massive economic intervention from the government in the form of tariffs or subsidies in order to foster make the things built here, that's not sustainable and is not a good idea. That's my view.
I think generally we agree on tariffs and specifically on the broad use of tariffs as opposed to strategic use of tariffs. I just want to make sure to translate specifically what the Defense Secretary of the United States of America just said on camera. He said that the American people are willing to put their lives on the line in defense of tariffs, which, by the way, are going to raise prices here for ordinary, everyday American families. And this is against the backdrop, of course, of an administration that has decided it is backing full-throatedly away from defending Ukraine and democracy in the European Union. But, okay, we're willing to go to war for tariffs.
Yeah, look, viewers know that I just call it like I see it. Sometimes I agree with Trump, sometimes I don't. I broadly agree with Trump's foreign policy and even his actions on Ukraine, which I know you don't agree with. The tariffs is Trump at his is the area on which I disagree with Trump the most strongly because, like you just said, I think even short-term economic pain in terms of prices for the American people is a bad idea. Now, you can make the case that with China, that it's necessary because of a larger national security problem that we have with China. I think it's harder to make that case for Mexico and Canada. I think it's especially hard to make that case with Canada. And then when you start getting exceptions for car companies, then here's my broader problem is, I think some of the progressive or Democratic criticisms of Musk and the other people that are now advising Trump in terms of the conflict of interest can be overblown. It is the case if, there's broad-based tariffs, but if you're a CEO of, there's some list of firms or industries that can get exceptions if you have a positive relationship with Trump or you're doing what he says or just a positive relationship with the government, then that's very much just, to my mind, progressive governments. That's the government picking winners and losers. That's crony corporatism. That's the government trying to plan the economy and say, this firm is indispensable, so they get an exception. This one is not. We know that's going to end up being corrupt and political. So if you're going to start doing exceptions to the tariffs anyway, there's no point to have them. So I would be harshly critical of this move, in fact.
Well, glad to hear it.
Yeah.
I generally think the challenge with this administration is that it doesn't feel like these big sweeping changes that the president and his top leadership are pushing are very thoughtful. It's not as if they've come at us with a very specific strategy and a really good explanation for why Americans are going to, quote, feel some pain, which may not seem like a big deal to billionaires, but it is obviously a really big deal to people who are having trouble finding eggs, and if they do find them, being able to afford them.
Yeah. Biden, of course, was also a fan of tariffs, though. Biden implemented tariffs against China. He continued the tariffs from the Trump administration. There is, in my view, far too much bipartisan agreement to do trade wars and tariffs that raise the prices and hurt ordinary Americans. I don't know why political leaders can't just get the message that the people do not want to pay more for things. Stop messing with the economy in this way. That's like the clearest signal they're trying to send through the way that they have voted in previous elections. So like you just said, I think it is incumbent on the administration to explain what they're actually trying to get out of Canada and Mexico. And again, if it's more about, here is some national security diplomatic goal I have and now it's been reached, okay. If it's, we're trying to, reshore manufacturing here, which I'm just so skeptical. If it works, great. If they want to come build things here, great. But if they'll only build things here because they get a subsidy and because they have all the other goods placed tariffs on, then it's not real. That's not the market at work. If the market can support it, and I would be for relaxing the other things that make it more difficult, but I think the better path is to find good trade partners around in other parts of the world who want to do manufacturing and want to be in a strategic economic alliance with the U.S.
I think the real point is if there's going to be value received on both ends of any sort of a trade agreement, whether that is precipitated because of some strategic use of tariffs or it's just a multilateral agreement where we're saying, hey, country X, you're providing certain goods to us and the value we're giving you is we're helping you create jobs in your own country. I feel like that is a fair way to look at it.
All right, stay with us. More Rising right after this.